Welcome students, alumni and guests to the 5th CUHK Law Female Legal Leaders Seminar. I'm Queenie Lai, Associate Dean of Teaching and Learning, moderator for today's session. So as an educator, there is no greater wish than to have my students flourish, not just in academic studies, but in career and in life. My fellow students and alumni, you will learn from our distinguished guests today to have a flourishing law career. It's not just about having legal knowledge or technical competencies. It takes much more than that to navigate the legal profession. It takes resilience, determination, consistent hard work, ability to juggle priorities, and pushing yourself out of comfort zone. We are honored to have with us today 3 distinguished female lawyers with different background and career paths, but equally impressive and outstanding achievements. We are grateful for their time joining us today in this important sharing, to share with us their career trajectories, their valuable insights and experience, tips on career management, and ways to flourish as a female practitioner in the legal industry in Hong Kong. May I warmly welcome our 3 distinguished guests to you all: Ms. May Tai, Asia Managing Partner Herbert Smith; Ms. CHEUNG, Partner Baker McKenzie; Ms. Julianne Do, President of Hong Kong Federation of Women Lawyers and Senior Consultant of Dentons. Before we begin today's seminar, I would like to thank Dean Wolf for his vision for coming up with the original idea of CUHK Law Female Legal Leader Seminar Series, creating a forum for much needed discussion for the Hong Kong legal community. It is clear from the huge number of registrants and support for the seminar that this is a much welcomed discussion. And thank you for the opportunity to host this meaningful seminar. Also, thank you to Jaden for administration support. The Female Legal Leader Seminar Series, organized by our faculty in our 4th year now, has chronicled huge success each year. It is an opportunity for our students and alumni to support and celebrate women leaders of Hong Kong legal community and to raise awareness and discuss ways to discover, develop, and harness talent and enhance diversity in the legal industry. More women than ever are choosing a career in law in Hong Kong. Over the past decade, Hong Kong's legal profession has seen an increase in female lawyers entering the profession, and women now constitute around half of Hong Kong's legal profession. I will share some statistics. Women made up of 65% trainee solicitors, 61% associate solicitors, and 30% partners at law firms in Hong Kong. Women bring distinctive thinking, ways of thinking and value to workplace as legal advisors, leaders, mentors, and peers. Our speakers today are role model for our next generation of lawyers, showing that every one of us, regardless of gender or ethnicity, can realize our strengths, make a difference, big or small, and make our own unique contribution to society. Now, without further ado, I'm honored and delighted to introduce our first speaker, Ms. May Tai, Asia Managing Partner Herbert Smith. She specializes in cross-border disputes and contentious regulatory matters. She regularly advises governments and commercial clients in Asia, Europe, and United States, including acting as counsel and advocate in arbitrations and court proceedings. Ms. May Tai has a long list of accolades, including leading individual, China-Hong Kong dispute resolution, arbitration, Chambers Asia Pacific Legal 500, International Law Firm Leader of the Year, Asia Legal Awards 2021, one of the 100 role model female executives, Heroes Women Role Models Executives, Female Lawyer of the Year, Benchmark Asia Pacific Dispute Resolution Awards, and Top 100 A-list Lawyer in China. Ms. May Tai has kindly provided her support and acted as distinguished professional mentor in the past for undergraduate students. We are humbled and grateful that she can join us today to share her wealth of experience with us. Before I hand over to May, dear participants, I'm sure you have lots of questions you would like to raise with our 3 speakers. Please feel free to send to me your questions through private message on Zoom, and I will read out your questions at the very end of the Q&A session. May, thank you. It's an honor to have you with us today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Queenie, and thank you to CUHK for the invitation. I'm honored and humbled to be asked to give this talk. So it will be pretty informal. I haven't written a sort of very formal speech. I'll start off with a bit about my background. I'm a Malaysian national, which actually, thinking about it when I was preparing for this session, has some parallels to Hong Kong as well. Malaysia was also a UK colony until quite recently, late 50s. Since then, it has had a bit of an identity crisis in the sense that it's a multi-racial, multi-ethnic society thrown together by history. And people in Malaysia have learned to get along with each other. And I lived there until I was a teenager and then spent most of my teenage years in Indonesia. It was my first taste of living in a culture other than the one that I was born to, and I loved it. Some might say, and I can completely understand that Malaysia and Indonesia are very culturally aligned, very similar. But actually, when you have your first exposure to a different culture, when even little things like instant noodles that you get from one place and another place are different and the flavors are different, you learn to adapt and you learn to appreciate diversity. And I did that from a very young age. And I think that's, just as a segue, I think that is one of the advantages of being from a Hong Kong background and of Hong Kong students. Hong Kong is very, very much a melting pot of different societies. And that's why people like myself are here to find career opportunities. Hong Kong students also have another advantage, which is that many of you will have lots of opportunities to do exchange programs and live abroad, either doing your studies or professionally. And that's something that really gives you a huge advantage later on in your career. And perhaps I'll come back to that a little bit more later. Back to my story, I went to university in the UK after completing high school in Indonesia. I went to Oxford. That was, again, another opportunity, I feel, to learn from others and to absorb other cultures. I ended up staying in the UK for longer than I expected. I always thought after university I'd come back and look for law jobs in Asia, but I ended up applying and doing a training contract in London with Herbert, as it then was. But of course, Asia was always calling me, and Asia's growth in particular being, more than 5% in most of the developing countries in Asia over the last couple of decades just couldn't be ignored by most international organizations, and especially my own organization, Herbert. And I think that has catapulted my career in many ways, much more than my personal attributes. So what ended up happening after I finished my training contract is that I have done secondment stints in Tokyo, in Singapore, and then in Shanghai, Beijing, and now Hong Kong. And I've been in Hong Kong for the last 8 years. And just so quickly completing a bit more about my journey to get to where I am today, I was promoted to partner in 2010. When I was promoted, I was based in Shanghai. It's clearly a recognition that, there was going to be the start of China's decade and even China's century back then. And so we needed to grow very significantly in China. So my promotion was part of that. And then fast forward to more recent years, in 2018, I was made the managing partner of China. And in 2020, I was made the managing partner of Asia, where our firm has 9 offices. And, it's not something I like to brag about, but I think it's very important that the students and young people out there know I was the first Asian managing partner of Asia, which seems to be like a very obvious attribute that one should have, but actually up until me, the role has always been held by someone from the UK. I was also the first female, and probably, although I haven't verified this, probably the youngest Asian managing partner to take the role. And it was a very important turning point for the firm, because I think, more than a symbol, but a recognition that in order to build up our Asia business, you really need to develop talents in Asia and promote Asians. And one day it is our aspiration to be not considered a UK headquartered firm or an Australia headquartered firm, because Herbert and Freehills, 2 big UK and Australia powerhouses, merged about 10 years ago. but to be considered an international firm and for our international footprint to work. And I'm sure we will hear more from other very, very successful international firms on this, including from Baker, McKenzie and Dentons. You really need to be truly international. And for us, because we don't have a very big platform in the US or in the Americas, Asia was the way that we were going to be truly international. And very much part of my mandate is to grow our Asia practices in my time as managing partner. So that's a little bit on the management side. And I hope will show that there are a lot of opportunities for Asia-based and Asian lawyers. You all have a very bright future in the sort of grand scheme of things. Separately on my practice, as Queenie mentioned, I'm a disputes lawyer. Specifically, my practice is focused on international arbitration, which these days, and even back when I first started, is a very popular practice area and considered very sexy. In terms of my career highlights, I have, for example, traveled to the Caribbean islands to interview witnesses. I've conducted my own advocacy in places like the Peace Palace in The Hague, which is a very glamorous and a big milestone if you're a disputes lawyer. I've represented clients, both private and state-owned enterprises, as well as states themselves in multi-billion-dollar disputes. And now in the last few years, I'm also sitting as an arbitrator and adjudicating on other people's cases now. So lawyers like myself appear before arbitrators like me that since I've become an arbitrator, and that's been also a very significant milestone and highlight in my career. Now that's very quick canter of my background. What I really wanted to spend my time on is to give you some tips that have helped me along my journey, and hopefully it will help you. It's not the sort of thing that you can adopt chapter and verse like my journey, you're going to emulate it and you'll be successful. Rather, I'm just giving you some food for thought, some hopefully words of wisdom that you can take and then adapt and build out your own career and your own journey. Hopefully incorporating some of this. And it's not stuff that, you can immediately put into practice. It's really, I'm just planting a seed, and then you will go away and think about it and work out what it means for you. So the first thing, and I think Queenie already alluded to this, is technical skills. Legal skills are very important. But my experience and the experience of many successful lawyers is that relationship building and that ability is perhaps even more important than your technical skills. Because at the end of the day, the legal profession, like many other professional services and other professions, is all about building relationships between you and your superior, your supervisor, your manager, between you and people who are working for you and under you in due course. Between you and your client, obviously extremely important, between you and the lawyers on the other side, between you and, in my case, the arbitrators who are adjudicating on my case and indirectly thinking to themselves subconsciously, is what Meitai saying something I can trust? Is she a trustworthy person? Is she a credible person? Do I believe the facts that she's given me? Do I believe the legal submissions she is making? So all of this is extremely important. And it means that you can't just hide yourself in a room and read law textbooks to become a good lawyer. You really, and some people are, I agree, much better at the relationship building bits of the job. It comes more naturally to them. But for those of you who, like me, I'm quite a shy person, and I'm always thinking, oh, why do these other really important people want to talk to me? What have I got to say to them that will be interesting? Don't let yourself second guess your contribution to the world. Just be yourself. And my experience is that once you invest enough time with someone, you spend enough time with a person, anyone can be interesting. You will find, their contribution and their value if you spend enough time with them. The other tip that I want to give you, and that's been very important in my career, is that you should be nice to everyone that you come across, whether they be the junior person, the support staff, the admin. because you don't know, and it's happened a lot in HSF, when a paralegal or a trainee, 1 year, in 10 years time, that person could be your boss, even as a partner. Justin D'Agostino, who's our CEO, very famously was a paralegal in the late 90s. And many people who were partners at that time are now, looking up to him, and he is their boss. So you never know how the dynamic changes. Likewise, you could be a junior lawyer and supervising a trainee or a paralegal who ultimately becomes your client. So it's really important for your reputation and just for your brand and your success in this journey to make sure you are nice and respectful to everyone. That's my first tip about relationship building. The second top tip is something actually I've learned one of my dealings with a paralegal. And what she said to me is, in life, it's not win or lose, but rather you win or learn. And it's an amazing thing that she said this to me at the time that she did, because it was actually a very difficult conversation that I was having with her, because the firm and her had decided to part ways because it just wasn't working out and she wasn't performing to the best of her abilities, and the job just wasn't right for her. But rather than be completely upset or be very resentful, she told me, there's no such thing as win or lose, it's just win or learn. And I think that's so true. Everything in your life, whether it's a setback, whether in my case, it's losing a case, whether it's an illness, whether it's a breakdown, everything is a learning experience. And it's an opportunity to assess what went wrong and how things can be better next time. And hopefully, those of you in the call, because you're still at a very young age, you wouldn't have encountered too many setbacks, I hope. But inevitably, in everyone's life, including mine, there will be setbacks. And the attitude that you take to those setbacks are really important. And if you keep remembering that there's no such thing as losing, but rather just learning, then I think you will bounce back better and stronger next time. My third top tip is to always have a plan. You'll be surprised for yourself. You'll be surprised even the most ambitious young lawyers that join Herbert Smith Freehills don't necessarily have a plan, or at least they have a plan to get into a law firm and then nothing else. And the saying is, if you don't have a plan for yourself, then you are part of someone else's plan. And that's not what you want, because other people don't know you as well as you know yourself. They don't necessarily have the full picture of what you enjoy and what you want to achieve in life and your strengths and your weaknesses. So don't just be an actor in someone else's plan, make your own plans. And the number of times I have to tell that to junior lawyers, in every performance review and in every sort of more casual discussion about people's careers, I have to keep reminding them that the firm doesn't have a mind of its own. You can't trust the firm to know what's best for you. You have to articulate that, and you have to have conversations with senior people so that they know what you want. You cannot just rely on other people noticing that you are a high performer, and help you out. You've got to be able to express for yourself what you want for your own career. So those were my 3 top tips, I think, that I have lived by, and hopefully will plant a seed with you and will resonate. And as you go through the next few years, several decades, as in my case of a legal career, it will stand you in good stead. I also wanted to say a few words about a few things that are quite important at the moment. It's quite a trendy topic to talk about and share my views on that. The first is agile working. So you will have seen this is a fantastic development, not just in the legal sector, but all over the place, about having better work-life balance by giving people more control, more agency about where they work and the hours that they work, etc. And I think it's a great development. I think it's really fantastic. The only thing I would caution young lawyers as you kind of take this journey and decide for yourself what type of agile working practice to adopt is, remember, one of my original words of advice, which is that success in being a lawyer is a lot about relationship building. And it's very difficult to build relationships through Zoom and through email communication. In the old days when I was supervising trainees, I would say, instead of sending an email, please consider picking up the phone to the client. I know it's scary, but the client, once they hear your voice and you can make some initial chit chat, will remember you so much more than if you send an email and they just answer and that's the end, and they don't even remember that you sent the email 5 minutes later. Likewise with your career, if you don't come into the office, you're not known, you don't have conversations by the water cooler, you don't happen to be around to help out a partner on an ad hoc query, then how do you expect these people to remember you when it comes time for promotion and partner promotion and voting on which partners, which associates to promote to partner? These things are really important, and I don't want you to lose out because you think, oh, great, agile working is here. We don't have to be in the office culture is dead. If you find other ways, you work from home, but you make sure you build deep, meaningful relationships with at least half a dozen partners in your office in other ways, join clubs, play tennis, go for pro bono activities with them, whatever it is, then great. But otherwise, I think there is still a role to be played with in-person office culture for your development. The next hot topic is diversity, and Queenie touched on this earlier. My view, and this is a controversial one, I know it's a very personal and subjective view to different people, and I just wanted to share my own. My own is that women have come a long, long way. When you hear the statistics that Queenie just read out, that is so much better than 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But having said that, there is obviously more that can be done, and women cannot let their guard down just because we've had some success. But having said that, and I think this is the big bit for me, when you're on your journey as a woman, you cannot isolate the opposite sex. The sort of statistics that we're seeing today, 65% women trainees and 35 male, and you want to reach a 50-50 partnership. The statistics are still very, very good and strong for men. And it's important that they don't feel isolated or alienated or feel like the opportunities are all going to someone else and not to themselves, because at the end of the day, it's a partnership and we're in it together. But having said that, I think for the women, you also don't need to worry too much, because my experience is that, shockingly and in many ways, the last 3 people who have left private practice on my watch in my team in arbitration have done it for family reasons have been men. One was a junior associate, one was a senior associate, and then actually the third example that I had was actually someone more senior to me, the executive partner in charge of Asia and Australia. All 3 have decided to take a step back from private practice in order to spend more time with their family and be the sort of primary caregiver. So the reason why I brought this up is because these trends are happening. The role at home in terms of taking care of family is being split more equally now between male and women. And I think this will have a positive impact in the professional sphere and make it more balanced between men and women as well. So my advice to the women out there, I think you are going in the right direction. The trend is going towards the right direction, and you shouldn't worry too much about it. But at the end of the day, in terms of your personal success, you should realize that not everyone gets along with everyone, and not everyone will like you for whatever reason, usually a reason that has nothing to do with your choices. And you don't have to worry about that too much, because you will find people who will champion you and who will like you and who want to do good things to help you succeed. So important for the women, important for the men on the call to know that the opportunities are still great for men, that just because the focus on D&I has been on other things doesn't mean that you'll be left on the wayside. And for women, important to know that whilst you may face some biases and stereotypes and glass ceilings, don't dwell on it too much, because for every person who fails to see your merits, there will be someone else who does and will help you and will champion you. So I think I've probably reached my time, so I will just leave it at that, and look forward to hearing the talks from the others. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, May. I really enjoyed your sharing. There's so much that resonates with me. I enjoyed hearing your background, your exciting journey around the world, and then, of course, breaking the ceilings. Thank you for sharing with us that you're one of the first Asia managing partner in Asia who's Asian and female. That's really an achievement that, it sets the record, for everyone, and gives us hope. And I really appreciate your, 3 top tips: win and learn, relationship building, and plan. So a lot of food for thoughts for all of us. Yes, thank you. And I also echo May's point, which is I would like to thank all male participants, colleagues and alumni today for joining us. This is not just a women's issue. We need your understanding and support as male allies to break the bias, stereotypes, and support talent irrespective of gender and ethnicity. So thank you, May. Appreciate your sharing. Next, I have the honor to introduce our second speaker, Ms. CHEUNG. Our second speaker, Kwun, is a partner in dispute resolution practice at Baker McKenzie, Hong Kong, focusing on company insolvency and commercial litigation. Kwun's practice includes litigation advisory work representing insolvency practitioners, corporate clients, and banks on a wide range of complex disputes and insolvency and restructuring matters. Kwun also has professional honors, including being selected as a leading lawyer, restructuring insolvency international law firms in China and Hong Kong by Chambers Greater China Region, IFLR, Chambers Asia Pacific. Kwun is a longtime supportive friend. When her office was next door of Bank of America Tower, we used to share with each other how rewarding it was to have a fulfilling career that we are passionate about, and we encourage each other on how to juggle work and parental responsibilities. So I'm very grateful that Kwun, being very busy, still have her time to share with us with you all today, her fulfilling professional life and also raising 2 very self-driven daughters. So thank you, Kwun, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real privilege and honor to be here to share some of my personal experiences with you this afternoon as you embark upon or continue, your journey in the legal field. And thank you to the CU Law faculty for this very kind invitation to share. So a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in England, and life events brought me to Hong Kong when I had just graduated and finished my law finals, and I really haven't looked back. It's been an amazing life journey, both professionally and personally. As Queenie mentioned, I have 2 daughters who are teenagers now. And trust me when I say that time really does fly past. It's with this in mind that I think it is really important to look at some guiding principles which I've lived by, and hopefully, my experience will shed some light as you move forward as well. And I think it's essential to enable you to hold on to these principles, to enjoy your career as you move forward and hopefully thrive on this journey. I appreciate that today we have some who are studying, so with a view to practicing, maybe in private practice or otherwise, and some who have already embarked upon their careers in the early days, but the same principles apply really. So I've been provided with some topics that to consider, and what I've decided to do is actually go through them, because seeing as they're top of mind and they're issues that I would cover anyway, there's a logical flow to it. So let's make a start. How or when did I know I wanted to become a lawyer? I guess at the time of choosing A-levels in England, a secondary school, because that's when you need to make sure you've got the basic requisites, right, for joining a good law school. But funnily enough, my initial thoughts were to become a doctor. And recently I was sharing with a good client of mine who's a friend now, and that's something we'll touch upon a bit later. And he said, "Oh, I can see you as a doctor as well, because you're careful, you're meticulous, and you don't miss anything, even the small things." And on reflection, when I was preparing for today, I thought, that is one of the things that I think really you can hold true to and think about as well. Choose something. Another topic is which area of law, right? Choose something that suits your character and your own DNA, if possible, as well. So how do I choose the area of law to specialize in? Well, here at Baker McKenzie, I was fortunate enough, I joined as a trainee, and you get to try all the departments. So it's a very broad coverage and fantastic in that way. But for me, found the thrill of going to court a huge adrenaline rush. I love the fact that you could prepare well. So that links up to my being meticulous and well prepared, you know. You could anticipate the judge, anticipate your opponents, and really just the skill was to hone your ability to persuade the court to see your side of things. So hopefully you could bring home the goods, right? Which is basically a successful outcome, whether it be a 2-minute application or whatnot at that time. But the whole point was to help the client and the case. I've always loved commercial company law. Those were all the topics that I chose at university. So commercial litigation, the advocacy side, R&I was a great fit for me. And I've had the privilege of practicing in this area since joining the firm as a trainee many moons ago. So I'd say be true to yourself. Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years' time? Speak to practitioners, as I did, in the transactional space or the advisory contentious space, and ask them what is it that they like? What is it that has made their career fulfilling as you decide for yourself? Now, some people know very early on when I speak, I'm actually the gatekeeper for trainees here. And when I speak to them, you know, some have a really clear idea of what they want to specialize in, but some don't, like I didn't. It's a blank canvas, and that's great. And I always say to them, you know, follow your heart and your mind. Whilst you intellectually know what you'll be good at, balance that against what your heart is telling you want to do and you'll most enjoy. So next up is qualities, mindset, skills, values, habits to flourish in the legal field. Now, as you embark upon the legal path, there will be some really high and good times, but equally there will be really low and challenging times, right? That's all part of life. But whilst the guiding principles are many, if I distill them down, I'll share with you some which I think are really important. So the first is pay attention to detail. To be persuasive in a case or on an internal office matter, or if you're championing a cause, you need to know what you're talking about really well and not, you know, for want of a better word, superficially. Always be very deliberate in your thinking. Really is no room for shortcuts, as it were. And people soon know who knows what they're talking about, you know, how well prepared you are for meetings, how well thought through something is. Always think 2 or 3 steps ahead. Have grit, right? We hear this term used a lot, but it simply means having thick skin when you need it, a sheer sense of determination to succeed, and digging deep when you need strength to carry on. In my experience, as you overcome challenges, it's always good to remember them and how you overcame, because gradually you'll become better prepared for, you know, future challenges. And in a sense, it really is, you know, you've been there, seen that, and you become more resilient. But of course, some of that comes with age as well, right? So how do you acquire grit if you don't have that already? So I would say, oftentimes I use the word infrastructure. So put yourself and you know, deliberately within an infrastructure that will enable you to best and most smoothly walk this walk. I call them anchors and bridges. So that's a takeaway that, you know, a tagline that you might want to bear in mind. Look for female mentors you can resonate with. You know, there'll be some people you just, as a matter of chemistry, you get on with, you can trust them and you can learn from them very closely. Look for those people in your life. Have friends who will, I made friends when I came to Hong Kong who are still very good friends. A couple of them are lawyers, and they know, you know, what you're feeling, what you're going through, albeit in a different firm. And it's always good to have these people who truly understand what you're going through to walk with you on this path. It is competitive, it is challenging, but very rewarding too. I'd also say be the change agent. So when you're going through hard times, I always say it's think about how you can improve the situation, right? They talk about what you can control. So be proactive rather than dwelling on why things are bad or why it wasn't like this or that or how somebody else can help you. Make positive changes and step at a time within the arena that you can control. May mentioned this as well, May Tai. be human. It's oftentimes about communication skills and your interaction within the firm, with clients, other service providers you work with. Even if you're in the right, pull back and think about the situation more holistically. The key is not proving who's right or wrong, but in resolving the matter and getting the case or the issue, the advice, whatever it might be, across the line successfully. So be considerate and always be thinking about how to move the matter forward. Be a problem solver and be able to articulate your solution graciously so that even those who don't think alike are persuaded to come on board. So as I mentioned, talking about being human, surround yourself with your loved ones and friends who will anchor you, be there for you in hard times, but also challenge you when they see and know you and believe it's a time of growth. So all contributes to making you more resilient and strong and able to withstand the pressures that you will face, as we all do. Another question is how junior lawyers can make the best of their early years of training experience. First thing that came to mind was a sponge. Be a sponge at all levels. Realistically, you will have a lot of book knowledge, but little practical experience and knowledge. So learn from those you're working with. Be conscious of what makes them effective and successful, the subtle things, and try to copy these, but in your own way, right? Make them your own skills, but watch and learn. I've known mentors who I've watched who have been amazing, working the room at client events, or they're so innovative in the way they do BD, or they so effortlessly build that trusted advisor role with clients. I'd say make sure nothing is wasted, knowledge-wise or relationship-wise. You may be training in a seat where you really think, I've been there. In all honesty, I'm not going to qualify in this seat sort of situation. But any information or skills you can pick up will come in handy, because whatever area you specialize in, ultimately, the deals, the cases that we see in our firms are cross-border, they're complex, cross-practice group, and you need to know and have the basic skills to be thinking, okay, these are the issues, I get it. I'm not the expert in that field, but I know I can spot them and I can speak about them eloquently, but also connect with the right people who can help you deal with the issues. So, I won't go into details, but basically, I can pinpoint things that I learned as a trainee that became useful for many years to come. Next was an interesting one. Did you face any obstacles, challenges as a female legal practitioner? How did you overcome these? I said, yes, in life, alongside successes, there will always be challenges. That's pretty much guaranteed. That's why you need to be mindful of building those bridges and anchors and to have that grit. Now, when I started as a junior, I joined the disputes team and my mentor was the practice group leader. And whilst I didn't notice it at the time, I was just trying to do a good job, keep up. I soon realized that those in the R&I arena were predominantly male, Western, and a lot older. And everyone seemed to play golf. Now, this can be an issue if you're building bridges because it's easier to do it with people you resonate with. But the lesson I've learned is that things do change over time and to maximize whatever opportunities are before you. So I made friends with those who were equivalent to my age, in the intermediaries, for example, and these same women and men are now the leaders in their firms and holding senior positions. And it's wonderful. I always say that I feel that we grew up together in the past decades, and as we've carved out careers for ourselves. So, things do change. Why do you think there are fewer female practitioners in leadership positions? How do we address these issues? We've all seen the stats and probably don't need reminding. I too looked at the Law Society Hong Kong survey of its members in 2019, same statistics that Queenie mentioned. And while all surveys will have their limitations, right, it depends who you ask and who responds. And it's by no means based on complete stats provided by all our firms, and everyone will have their own stats, and we must recognize that. But it does give you a sense of things, and is not far from what we've been reading for years, right? So they looked at discrimination generally, but the highest, most prevalent form was actually gender discrimination. It also found that male respondents were actually earning more than women. This was interesting. If I didn't read wrongly, they were looking at the higher income bracket, and 12.7% males earned Hong Kong 4 million above, compared to 4.3% of women. And whilst more than half of new entrants to the profession are female, only 1/3 at the senior level are female. But of course, again, each firm will have their own statistics, right? Specific percentages, in all fairness. And based on this survey, as Queenie mentioned, as at June 2021, 65% women made up 65% of trainees, 61% of associate solicitors, 38% consultants, 30% partners. So you can see this there. Now, there is, as that article said, a sustainability issue in a sense. If you've got most entrants going in are female, but they're dropping off along the way, right? So that's food for thought. Now, we're told there are many reasons for this: childbirth, child rearing. Although for me, I feel that should be less of an issue in Hong Kong because we have very affordable help compared to some other jurisdictions, right, for the home. And they say women have to work twice as hard to be heard, to be seen. But I would say if you're determined to succeed, don't let these statistics affect you too much. Look for ways in which you can make changes that will help yourself and indeed others to follow. How can you do this? In the workplace, I'd say set yourself up within a supportive community, right? Sign up female mentors inside and outside of the workplace to learn. Always look for opportunities to advocate these messages as you progress in your career, whether it's in panels, simply sharing with those around you so that they are too inspired and encouraged on this journey. And the reality is, in my experience and what we've heard for many years now, is the C-suite of the top MNCs. They expect to see diversity and good women representation on the legal team. They are fully aware that there is a lot of benefit to the business to have a balanced team. And these messages in the market really work in your favor. At home, again, infrastructure is the key word as you balance your personal life as well. If you're single, then, child rearing is not really an issue, but you also want to have a healthy social personal life. If you're married and like me have children in due course, it's essential, I think, to have a partner who understands completely and shares your same passion to succeed in your career. They will act as your balance. They will step in when you simply can't be there, right? Because of work commitments. You will be absent from some school events, for example, but if you work as a real team, you can make it work. There will be sacrifices. Nothing comes without a price. But provided you truly love what you do and you want to do it, you'll find a way, right? You'll make it work. There's a will, where there's a will, there's a way, as they say. So finally, it was advice or tips for female law students. My advice in closing applies to all genders, but it's essentially to try and become the best you can in whatever you do. When you're a junior, that's the task at hand, right? Do it so well that the senior team thinks you're reliable and want you on their cases and deals. As you become more senior, it's the client handling side, the external side of things as your responsibility grows. Remember that people quickly sense what someone is like, whether they are genuine people that they feel they can trust and rely on and become friends with, even though technically they're your client. Once you demonstrate your ability and earn the right to be their trusted lawyer, and that essentially means helping them fulfill their KPIs and progress in their careers, you will have opportunities to share your own personal story, and that may well resonate with them. You will then embody the full package, somebody who's excellent at what you do technically on the law, but also human and somebody that people can relate to and want to spend time with. So with all of these different building blocks, hopefully you'll find a really meaningful and successful career and a successful personal life. So I'll stop there. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to share with you all. Thank you, Queenie.
Thank you so much, Queenie. I think there's a common theme with what May mentioned and Queenie mentioned. The common theme is that we should build trust with everyone around us, with clients, with internal teams. And so thank you, Queenie, so much for sharing all your guiding principles. I've noted down, follow your mind and heart, attention to detail, grit, be proactive and bring about positive changes, and be a sponge in your junior years. So thank you so much for sharing, Queenie. Moving on to our third speaker, and I have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Julianne Do, who recently taken up the presidency of Hong Kong Federation of Women Lawyers, and she's also the senior consultant of Dentons. Julianne is a seasoned corporate lawyer with more than 25 years of experience in M&A, capital markets, and corporate finance. Her work includes structuring strategic acquisition and investment transactions, cross-border M&A, private equity, IPOs, and other forms of capital raising. Julianne is actively involved in various leadership roles in community and pro bono activities. Besides being president of the Hong Kong Federation of Women Lawyers, she's also a fellow of the Hong Kong Institute of Directors, a task force member of Hong Kong Women Professionals and Executive Association. And I have the privilege of meeting Julianne through her former role as Law Society external examiner for the PCLL course at CUHK Law. Julianne also spearheaded her firm's pro bono and diversity initiatives in Asia and has contributed significantly to the firm's profile in this area in her work for Women's Foundation, the Arts with the Disabled, and the Good Lab, organizations which advocate and promote women's issues, disability talents, and entrepreneurial incubation. Her initiatives has resulted in the firm being nominated as a caring company by the Hong Kong Council of Social Service. I would also like to share, I've noted on Julianne's firm website that Julianne recently dedicated to continuous lifelong learning and self-improvement. I understand that Julianne is one of her firm's first partner to pass the Greater Bay Area Legal Professional Examination, which is a newly introduced exam to qualify Hong Kong lawyers to practice in mainland China. So now over to Julianne. Thank you for sharing your experience with us.
Thank you so much, Queenie. It's one of the disadvantages of being the final speaker is that really most of what you want to say has been so eloquently and comprehensively addressed by the previous speakers that it's sometimes a challenge to find what else which is so well addressed that you can add to, but I will try my best. So what I want to do is to talk a little bit about my own background and the firm I'm with, some of the areas where I found that there has been progress and what demands my attention these days, and of course addressing some of the challenges as a woman lawyer, and also there are some brilliant tips that have been already given by our other speakers, earlier speakers, and maybe I can add a thing or two, hopefully that would be helpful to everyone as well. So let's get started. So first of all, my own background. Well, I grew up in Hong Kong and I attended university. So my LLB I graduated with my LLB in Hong Kong. I then progressed to obtain an LLM in Cambridge and then came back to work in Hong Kong and started my training in my legal career in Hong Kong. I've always been in private practice and a little bit different from our earlier speakers. I'm actually a corporate lawyer from day one of my qualifying as a lawyer. So I always get laughed at by our litigators who proclaim that they are the real lawyers and not the corporate lawyers. So I have yet to find an adequate response to that, but I take that as a good joke. So working in Hong Kong for all this time, as I mentioned, I've been in private practice and with Dentons since I'm trying to find the years, 2011. And now everyone kind of knows the name Dentons. It was a 100-year-old firm, but it had an office in Hong Kong, then it closed its office, and it actually reopened in 2011, and I was part of the reopening of this team. It's also a global office, very much like Herbert with Freehills and McKenzie, many offices in the world. And it's one of the things that I found challenging and exciting working in an international law firm is the many people, different kinds of people that you have to deal with, even your own colleagues. Now, one of the things I find when I talk to my junior lawyers is that there's a tendency when there's communication with not only clients, but even your colleagues in other offices who are also your clients in a sense. There's a tendency to talk as if you're talking to someone who already knows Hong Kong law, which I find really amusing because I find that my sometimes when I talk to junior lawyers that they they start quoting all sections of the law, and I tell them, well, actually, you don't have to quote copious sections of the law, because all you have to do is to tell them in very succinct words what the law is actually about, but you don't have to quote chapter and verse, because really no foreign lawyer wants to read Hong Kong law as well as their own law. So sometimes I think that's one of the skills, and what I'll talk about later. So what I found exciting, of course, in this environment is dealing with all different colleagues from different parts of the globe who come to Hong Kong with various requirements and demands and requests for their clients, some of which are based on totally different legal concepts to what we're used to in Hong Kong as a common law jurisdiction. And of course, most exciting and challenging for me has been the link up with the national mainland Chinese law firm of Dachang in 2015. So the joining of Dachang meant that we had a network all of a sudden of 40 offices in China, all of which, well, not all of which, I think mostly in the big cities, had a stable of international Chinese clients that wanted to actually go abroad. And I know that a lot of you will remember and recall that there was a time when there was a lot of Chinese investment going abroad. And there was a lot of capital that was looking for places to invest. And in all those situations, it was a very exciting time, very exciting both for the Chinese lawyers to be able to service their clients. They didn't have to then pass them off to another law firm. They could say, oh, we have an office in Hong Kong. And that was something that brought in a lot of business in terms of volume, in terms of corporate transactions, and in terms of opportunities to actually work together as a team with both our Chinese counterparts on the mainland and also wherever their investment was. So we were working with colleagues from the Middle East, from all parts of Europe, from all parts of North America, and also in Australia, New Zealand. It was just everywhere. So that was a training as well. I think that first of all, you have to be up at all hours of the night and also be prepared to answer questions that you might think should be known, but actually are not familiar legal concepts from people who are not of the common law jurisdiction. So that was a very good training ground, I think, not only for myself, but for Julianne lawyers as well, to have the experience of dealing with all these different issues and all these exciting projects. The other thing that I found is a trend is the need to be well-versed in technology. I'm not talking about doing the role of my IT colleagues, but to know what the law is as regards the new technological developments. So I have had to do a lot of learning simply because as a corporate lawyer, I get to be asked questions in all areas of, in all kinds of industries, not just the traditional ones. And even though you may say, okay, my firm has a TMT department, or my firm has a technology department, still, as a corporate lawyer, clients are beginning to ask you, do you know, yes, you do M&A, but do you know a technology company M&A, or do you know natural resources M&A? So all that seems to be something that we may not realize at first, but is beginning to be so demanding of us that we need to have some kind of knowledge, and not only in M&A, which is what I do a lot of, but also in regulatory advice as well. So my area of work is, as Queenie mentioned, I do capital markets, I do corporate M&A, and I also do a lot of regulatory advice. And as everyone will know now, the world is so regulatory in nature that almost every second thing that you do has some kind of regulation attached to it. So I'm finding that people are asking us about cryptos, they're asking us about metaverse, they're asking us about digital currencies and digital assets. And whilst we play catch up, I think it's incumbent on us to really view this as a non-stop learning. And I think that's as much for senior lawyers as well as junior lawyers. I really don't believe in even for senior lawyers to say, okay, this is what I know, and I'm not going to learn anymore because I feel that I just want to stay in my comfort zone, because our clients are actually changing their mode of operation as well. Even traditional industries. For example, if you just think of something as simple as retail, right? It's not just a bricks and mortar shop. People are looking online, retailing, e-commerce. So we have to be ready to cater to our clients' needs as well. And I find that that's something that I want to stress to junior lawyers, that you must keep on learning and keep on understanding that the world is moving, business is moving, and you must know how to be a lawyer to those moving businesses. That's very important. As regards, challenges, I find that, well, I think that there are a lot of challenges that do meet women lawyers, and I'm not saying that really cannot be overcome. I think that there's been so many good points that have been made already earlier by May, and also by Queenie, that I feel that there's probably not that much that I can add to it. But earlier this month, I actually had a chance to have a similar diversity and inclusion sharing with some of my colleagues in Dentons in China. In fact, it was a firm-wide, China firm-wide sharing about D&I, which of course is probably a little bit less placed it on the top of the priority list in Asia, right? But I did share with them that some of the challenges that I feel that are placed for women can be seen in some of the stats. And I know that we say, well, don't, and Queenie did mention it, don't be put off by the stats. I remember for this particular sharing that I had with my colleagues in China, I did a little bit of a research within my own office. And I realized that at an overall level, when we look at how many, how much of a percentage-wise did we have in terms of women against the whole percentage of lawyers that I had in my office, and I found that it was around 60%, around 60%. But when you get to counsel, consultant, partner level, like the senior levels, that percentage actually drops. Okay, it dropped to actually 30-something%, which I think, well, could do better. And so it got me thinking about what are the things that challenges women lawyers, and maybe I can think of a few things. I think that work-life balance was mentioned earlier, especially in a kind of Asian culture, when you have your family, you're kind of, there's more expectation, I think, in an Asian culture for the woman to be the one rushing home to look at homework, for example. So that is infringes or encroaches on your work-life balance. You feel that you don't really have much of a choice. It's either you have a focus on your career or you have a focus on your family, and you can't have it both. So that leads to many women thinking that way and getting discouraged. I think that's one of the challenges that has to be overcome. Second thing is, I find that sometimes you get challenges from clients. Now, and this might be an extreme case, but I've had clients, one or two clients, who, even though there's equally men and women on the team, they choose to talk to the men in their emails and communications. And sometimes it's because of their own culture, and these sometimes are clients from other Asian countries, not necessarily Hong Kong. And there are communities, cultures I find which are even more conservative than Hong Kong, more male-oriented they're Hong Kong. So you have these clients, they only phone up the male lawyers, which is infuriating, right? Because you realize that sometimes it's the male lawyers who are the junior lawyers, and they don't know the answer. And they have to come to you for the answer. And you find, well, why did the client phone you? Things like that, I find are very infuriating, but also amusing. Sometimes there are clients who have this mistaken feeling that women don't always perform very well in a challenging negotiating environment. Like you don't know how to face someone who's hostile, or you don't know how to negotiate from a position of strength. And also that this can be the case in a corporate and a litigation, both context. And so that's clients. Thirdly, it's your own office. Now, I'm really, really thrilled that we have a managing partner in our midst, because it shows that, you know, the office assumptions can be mistaken. And I'll tell you some of the office assumptions that can happen if you're not careful. First of all, your partners can think that let's give all the soft stuff to the females. So when I mean soft stuff, I mean some of the non-billable stuff, such as the pro bono work, setting office policies, training. Let's give all that to the woman partner, which is not right? There should be an equal responsibility for all these things. And you have to really stand up for people. Like, no, why am I in charge of the pro bono program? You should be in. So things like that. So I think that one has to make sure that when you have a position, that you make it known, and should be, in a way, your ability to stand up for yourself should be genderless. You should be able to make your case. You should be able to express your views. And there should not be a gender element in this at all, unless, of course, you're actually fighting for a gender point, like people pay, things like that. And obviously, you're trying to make a point on based on gender bias. And then I guess finally, I could say something about networking. I do buy the point that sometimes you don't play golf, or you don't have drinks after work, and how does that work out when it comes to networking? It's something you can't help, right? If you can't play golf for love of life, or you don't like drinking, then it's really tough to force yourself doing it. But I think that with networking, you can always build a network by other means. I think that some of the points that May was making earlier are so true, that you can network based on your own abilities with other women. Why should golf be the only way of networking, right? Why not other hobbies? Why not other types of gatherings? And mentoring as well. I think that if you have an office which doesn't have a good mentorship, even if it's not a formal program, if you can find someone that you can talk to and bounce ideas off, your peer group or someone a bit more senior, I think it's very helpful in increasing your own confidence and your own network. And that should be something that you should try to improve and make yourself a network. And I think that for me, it wasn't that easy, because I was always very much an introvert, very badly introvert. And it was very difficult for me. I was very shy. I really didn't like talking to people, and not because there was anything wrong with the other person. It was just me. I was just very shy and very quiet. And it took a lot of effort and some mistakes to realize that no one was going to come up and talk to me. If I was thinking all the time that why did someone talk to me, then I would have to ask myself, why am I not talking to them? Why am I not taking the initiative? So I think that is something that one should really remember, that no one has the obligation to talk to you if you don't try and make an effort. So that's really goes on to some of the advice, the advice part. I think that the part of accuracy in legal work, I mean, that's a given. You cannot be anything else but 100% or more accurate, because I think that sometimes junior people, if they have an attitude which is not so not so good at, for lack of a better word, is that when you take the view that, oh, let me just give a reasonable effort, and then someone senior will just correct my mistakes. That is sometimes what some people do, and I think that's wrong. I think that you should try your best at least to make sure that with some work product that you produce is almost good to go, as if someone's not going to look at it anymore. And then passion. You have to be passionate about what you do. You have to build up the relationships, as has been already mentioned. I mean, I always tell junior lawyers, why should someone not go to the lawyer next door? It's because maybe you have been able to build up a good relationship with them, and maybe a personal one. So I feel that relationships are very important, both anyone that you come across, not necessarily because of your potential clients, but and not even because of their lawyers, maybe even because they're not lawyers. It never helps to have someone in another industry that you know, at least someone who knows a little bit better about some areas. Like if someone you know is in a technology sector, maybe you can bounce ideas or even ask them some silly questions that you would be embarrassed to ask anyone else. So I think that relationships are good for you from any angle. They are good for you to build up friendships and relationships. So as a woman lawyer or as a male lawyer, proceed with confidence, but humility, I think. And maybe one of the just two final points as my time is up is language skills. I think that in Hong Kong, I think the English and Chinese language skills are pretty much critical. It's what we test entry-level lawyers on in any event. And also finally, I think bouncing back. I think that every one of us experiences a lot of discouragements and things go badly. And I'm sure that we look at honestly reflect ourselves. There are probably a lot more bad things that have happened that we'd like to remember. But bouncing back is very important because it enables you to go on. And I think this win or learn mentality is very important. So I really hope that it's some of these points have been helpful, and happy to take any questions in the remaining time frame. So thanks very much. Thanks, Queenie.
Thank you, Julianne. Sharing from your perspective. So I feel that networking and building relationship is really a common theme. And thank you, Julianne, for your frank sharing. I think it's a common question I often get from Asian female students, which is they are rather shy and introvert. And so it's really nice to hear from you, Julianne, that you've managed to overcome your introvertness and shyness. And but the key point is to make an effort to be proactive and reach out. So we really appreciate your sharing, and a lot of food for thought as well. To be well versed in technology, continuous nonstop learning, and equal opportunities for all. It should really be genderless issue. Before I move on to a really fantastic number of questions that have been submitted to me, I just want to read out a comment which sums up, I think, the positive feedback from all our participants today. It says, I have a question for Queenie. Could we get a transcript of this seminar? There are so many wise words spoken by all these established female speakers. So I think our audience really appreciate all the wisdom from you all. From the remaining time, one of the first question, it says, building trust is emphasized by all the speakers. How could you balance building trust amongst different parties at the same time? For example, a client can complain the bill is too expensive and will say the other competitors can do it at a better pricing. But you have an internal policy saying that if you write off more than 10%, you will need committee's approval. So how do you build trust with different parties and balance all these different interests at the same time? Can you share your experience, please? So perhaps I'll go to Julianne first.
Thanks, Queenie. Yes, I think that's probably a question that every one of us will get most of the time. Especially, I think I've had a lot of experience with that, especially with the early days and with without being sounding prejudicial with mainland Chinese clients. And I think that that's not wrong in a sense from their angle, because there's a culture to do with legal spend. And I think that from Chinese clients previously, before the legal industry really took off, legal spend wasn't even a thing. Unlike if you look at, say, a country like US, for example, legal spending and legal fees are a part of life. It's a cost of doing business that you have to take legal advice very early. Whereas with Chinese clients, first of all, you don't take legal advice until very late, when it's almost too late to save the deal. And then also there's this the complaint about it being expensive. So I think that there's something that you can't help it. The client behavior you cannot help. And also one of the other things you'll find is that it is necessary for a lot of Chinese companies, especially state-owned companies, to get bids to almost tender out the job. And without coming in as very competitive, I think it's impossible to get a job. Now, I think that there's something that to be said for talking through, if your internal office policy is that you have to get approval from some committee or some managing partner, then it's a path you have to follow. There's no way you can get around it because that's your office policy. But I think that you have to make a good case, especially that, you know, I really, unless we don't want the job, unless we can continuously turn away work like this, can we have some guidance on how we should do this as a case-by-case basis, and also make a good case of whether this client is worthwhile sacrificing some fees in order to develop a relationship. Sometimes it's a loss leader, sometimes it's an experienced leader that you want the type, you want to build up the experience in that type of work. So I think that a good case to make for situations like this is very important.
Thank you, Julianne. Kwun.
Yes, I think we face this, of course, all the time. And I find that it's being, you know, really thinking carefully about the two sides and being true to what you want to achieve on both sides. So internally, you can't have massive write-offs because it just affects, you know, the numbers and profitability with clients. I totally agree. Is this a client that we want to invest in? Is there's some broader reason, right, or a relationship overseas, etc. But what I found, I agree with the state-owned as well. Chinese clients, often it's a very, very tight bidding and procurement process, and you're asked to lock in the stages and how much it will be, and to cap it if you can, etc., etc. And you've got to work around that, but just be very real and very true to them, right? And what you can achieve internally as well is just reaching that balance, so that maybe, for example, it's by saying, okay, there are certain things that we will give you the guidelines, but your business team can work on, so that you then provide it to us and we advise. And it's finding a structure and sticking to it as you move forward, so that it works on the budget with the client, but also you don't end up, you know, writing off huge amounts internally as well, which obviously will not work. So just, yeah, critiquing the situation, whether you take on the client or not, and for what reasons, right? There must be reasons for that, and how you manage the pricing. Thank you, Queenie.
Thank you, Kwun. May?
Agree with all of that. I think pricing is definitely an area where, you know, the rubber hits the road, and our credibility as a leader, you know, is hard to balance. The other areas are, you know, sometimes being honest with junior lawyers about their partnership promotion prospects. And I think for me, it's very tempting when I first came into positions of leadership to be a crowd pleaser and say the thing that the person desperately wants to hear, whether it's the client that we're going to give them the discount, whether it's internally that we are going to work to budget and not overrun, and to the associate, you know, that their prospects are bright. But in the latter years, I've learned that honesty is always the thing that is going to stand you in right stead and build trust with people in the long run. And if you're not honest, you'll come back to bite you. And that sometimes means just sitting there for a long time while the other person, expresses all their frustrations and their anxieties about why this thing is so important to them, whether it's fees or promotion or whatever it might be, and just listening to them, but then kind of making it very clear what your position is and what your, scope that you can move is, and just spending the time to build that trust, even if the message is not something that they want to hear.
Thank you, May. The next question we have is, I want to talk about, one of the topics is leadership. So what makes a good leader, and does gender matter? From your experience, do you think men and women lead differently? How do you lead others at your firm? Any tips to share with all of us? Thank you. Perhaps May, could you go first?
Oh, everyone brings something different to the leadership equation, which is very helpful, because I don't think our firms could develop and thrive if it wasn't for the fact that we have different leaders bringing in different perspectives. Yes, I definitely think that there is a difference to the way that men and women lead. Just to pick an example, when everyone finished speaking just now, I was thinking, everyone stuck to the guidance on time frame. If this was a panel with perhaps more men, we would have maybe, have someone overrun. And that's a massive stereotype and generalization. But, women are very, very organized generally, and they will not try and have a bigger share of the slice of the pie than what's fair and what's allocated. Again, massive generalization. It's hard to know exactly how to split male leadership traits from female leadership traits, other than to say that, leaders behave very, very differently. And certain women leaders are more like their certain male counterparts, and certain men are more like certain women. It is really so different. But what is good is that there is this difference and diversity of thoughts about what is the best way to lead the cohort that you are leading.
Thank you, May. Julianne, would you mind sharing your thoughts? Thank you.
I personally think that women leaders are probably a bit more patient. I think sometimes it's I don't know whether it's the DNA. I think we're also a little bit more personal, in the sense that we think about the person a little bit more in addition to the issue. So in that, and I mean that we tend to look at, let's say, for instance, if someone comes to me with a problem, I would think about not only the issue and the impact it has on the business, on the firm, but probably a little bit about the person as well, why he's having this problem. Let's say if someone comes to you and says, "Oh, I have such a big problem with time management," I think one of the easiest things to say is that, okay, well, what is this having in terms of impact on work product or client response time? But also sometimes I would think that maybe female leaders might have a little bit more, give a little bit more thought to why, what is behind this problem with time management. Is the person being given too much? Just a little bit more looking at the person as well. So we're a little bit more holistic, and also probably a little bit more patient, but that's my personal view.
Thank you, Julianne. And Kwun?
Sure. I agree, resonate with some of what's already been said, but in my experience, I often find it's the person as well. It may not necessarily be the male female thing, although I agree with what's been said. I've had situations where I've had male seniors who have really understood And I put that down to, when I think about it, their own situation. Say, for example, it's a family issue, but they are very family orientated. They would just get what you're talking about. So it could just be the character and circumstance of the senior that you're talking to. But yes, men and women generally are quite different. But for what makes a good leader, if I jump to that side of the question as well, I really believe it's through trust and respect, right? Walk the talk, and people see you living that, and you share your stories, and in that way they see that you're able to relate to, even though you're at a different level, if you know what I mean. So yeah, building that respect out. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwun Yi. We have many more questions, but I think we have time only for one left, and I chose this question, which I think it was the perfect ending for our fruitful discussion today. So the question is from our audience: what is the most fulfilling part of the speaker's legal journey? Would you mind sharing with us what is your most fulfilling part? Perhaps I'll start with May this time.
Oh, there is so much that is good, and that's why I suspect it's kept us in our roles for such a long time. I guess that the leadership and the management aspect is something that it's sort of more new to my professional diet in recent years. And I think it started off, my first leadership role as a partner was as graduate recruitment partner. And I think that is the most fulfilling because, I love interacting with younger people. They have so much energy and enthusiasm and optimism for the future, and have so many bright ideas for how the industry should develop and what we should be doing next as a firm. And that really energizes me. So of late, I think that, doing things like this and interacting with younger lawyers is something that's very, very fulfilling for me.
Thank you, May. And Julianne?
I think that one of the most exciting things that and fulfilling things I have is interacting with clients, as well as people in the office. But clients is because there's so much to learn from them. There's so much to learn from them because they're all involved in different industries. They're all involved in different areas, and they're experts in their own field, and they are able to impart so much knowledge and wisdom because when they when they have a project or when they have a problem, it's come from a situation where they try to do business, for example, or there's something personal experiences. And you learn from them because they're able to tell you the background of what's led to the position that they're in now. Sometimes it's a business journey, sometimes it's something great or not so great that's happened to them. And I think that that's been something that I've been able to learn all my life. Obviously, with people in the office, I think that I like interacting. Although I said I was shy, I think that once you get going, you start interacting with people in the office, that you have a lot to learn, and you can discover, you can make friends. And so it's been a fulfilling journey for me.
Thank you, Julianne. And Kwun Yi?
Thanks, Queenie. I'd say, yes, the people. It's the people. I mentioned I'm the gatekeeper here for disputes, and that gives me a great segue to just see what, I see myself in them because I was there many decades ago, and you just see what's going through their minds with a different, era that we live in. So just the people that you meet, that you see, and, for my part here at Baker's, I'll have colleagues in all over the globe that I can work with, and then some of them you haven't even seen, and then when you see them, it's like a long lost friend, and it's amazing. So internally, people, clients, of course, that you can grow as friends. A very fulfilling part, I think, is something I mentioned, doing something that you love, because that enables you to keep going. Because when you really love what you're doing, it really does make a difference, right, for the day by day. And for me, you know, going to court and having landmark cases, being truly blessed to have cases that have made new law during my career. And I think that is something that I was always look back on and think like, wow, you know, those really useful for the community as well, but as a professional side was very, very fulfilling. And then finally, I just say growing as a person. So being in the role, growing up, you know, as a female lawyer here, just being pushed to grow in all aspects, in leadership, you know, clients, BD, everything that's been mentioned before. I think that's tremendous for your own personal growth as well. So all of the above has been very fulfilling for me. Thank you.
You, Kwun, May, and Julianne, all three sharing, you know, what is fulfilling in your legal career. And I think that's the perfect ending for our very, very fruitful discussions today. I sincerely wish everyone in the audience, CUHK law students and alumni, like our three distinguished speakers, you can harness your unique strength, do something that you love, keep on growing as a person, and find a career or course or specialization you are passionate in and fulfill your true potential in career and in life. So on behalf of CUHK Law faculty, our students and alumni, I thank the three speakers again, May, Kwun, and Julianne, for your authentic and warm and honest sharing. You've shown our students that with grit and determination, everyone in the audience can overcome self-limiting beliefs and walk paths that no one has before. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.